This is Operation B, the podcast about living with intention, building what feels true, and dropping the things that don't. A place where purpose meets practice. I'm Jamie Thurber, your host, and together we'll explore how to live with clarity, freedom, and alignment without burning out or losing yourself, because it's time to be who you're meant to be. Let's get into it. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Operation B. Thank you for being here. This is Jamie, your host. We're going to dive right into something that was brought to my attention yesterday that was actually really rejuvenating for me. So I hope that it feels good for you guys too. So yesterday I was sitting in with a client of mine and a friend who I help with her podcast, because you guys know that I'm a partial owner of that podcast studio now. And the reason that I landed there to begin with was because of Ashley's show. Plug Ashley, This Is Where We Heal. Go check it out. It's a great show. So I was sitting in with her yesterday on a filming, and we were just talking about different things, business things in the beginning, before she got started, while we were waiting for like audio and stuff to get all set up. And she mentioned something to me that I really obviously needed to hear and be reminded of. And she said, so many women like me, and this isn't just for women, but of course she's speaking from herself. So many women like me need someone like you who can see what's possible, who can help them see what's possible, who can help them look outside of their current reality for more, who can help them then figure out how to get there, and then encourage them of the different thoughts and the different things and the mindset shifts and the stuff that's possible, that's like necessary to get you there. And I was like, you're right. And you see, you guys, there was a time where I poured all of my energy into telling stories like that online all the time, all of my energy into writing blog posts and recording things specifically about that topic. And I realized that obviously we all go through seasons, and the world goes through seasons, and it's a good thing. I was thinking about it a lot last night. And then this morning when I sat down to film, I was like, you know what? I'm going to write down the series of things that are necessary to continue to encompass, become, believe, restructure, reevaluate, reprogram in order to believe that you can genuinely do whatever you put your mind to. Like the whole break glass ceilings thing. And it's funny that message, or not funny, I guess it's ironic, that message came from Ashley, because the previous week I was on her show and she had asked me some questions, and we ended up in a really cool conversation about her growth. During that interview, she told me that until like a year or so ago, she didn't ever really know that there could be more, that she could want more, that she could have more. You know, she grew up and thought you fall in love, you get married, you have a kid, you get, then you do that life, and then that's it. Like, she never wanted or like dreamed of more than that, really. It was a little foreign to me, to be honest, because I grew up always daydreaming about what could be and what I could create and what could happen and all those things. And I definitely grew up, well, let's tag a song below. It's called Wild One by Faith Hill. It's an oldie but a goodie. And that's really my world. Like, I grew up with parents that let me be wild, but also held my feet to the ground and said, you can be anything you want to be. And I didn't even know what that meant. It was a beautiful share, and it made me really think, and it made me feel really called to start to have a different part of this conversation with you over the next several episodes. And so the word that came to mind was the possibility mindset. What? That's beautiful. I've actually never heard that before. What I would say is that for my own story, like, even though I grew up, like I said, listening to my parents say those things to me, I also grew up in a very blue-collar family. Everybody that I know in my family and their friends work exceptionally hard to create what they have and enjoy and all of those things. I mean, they've just worked very, very hard to create those things. That's all I've ever seen, right? So I grew up, that's what I wanted to do. That's why I skipped so much high school, like so many days in high schools, because I just want to go to work. Like, I didn't want to go to school. I'd say that When I left, so I was in automotive. I worked for my boyfriend in landscaping construction. That's the first business side that I helped manage. And I saw the way that he dreamed big. And I didn't ever really think about that for myself. It was like at the time I thought I was going to marry him or whatever, right? So I let him dream big and I was just the support girl. And then you flash forward, I left there. I ended up doing a couple of like random jobs. And then I found my place at the insurance company at Gallagher Bassett. And I moved up really quickly and I was traveling and they were paying for me to travel. And I had tons of responsibility, which was very cool. And I really loved that. And then the day happened that I met my old boss and I was like, what? Because he owned several shops and was like, or two shops at the time, and said, since you know the insurance side, but you also have a car background, if you come over here, it could be a really cool thing. Which was really brilliant on his part, really, because it actually was a brilliant thing. We were able to create a lot of cool things together, and I was able to help them make a lot of money. And I learned a lot. But it was during my time at that job, I think, where I started at the front office, and then I wound up operations manager, right? So during that transition, which only happened in like a 4 or 5 year window, by the way. So that's pretty fast to move up in that capacity. And like my salary had more than doubled and all of those things. But I feel like it was during my time there that I started to realize that I could live my life differently. I worked a lot. I still do, right? But I worked like I'd get there around 7:30, 8 o'clock every morning, and I didn't leave until 6 or 7 every night. That's how we all were there, though. It's weird. It was like a cult, but we didn't mean for it to be a cult. But it required that much work because technically we were understaffed and we all loved the place so much that, or liked our jobs or felt respect to each other, that we all stayed, longer hours to get shit done, basically. But it was during that time that I started to see the way that others were recognizing my skill set. And what I mean by that is like others in the automotive industry or the auto insurance industry would hear me talk about things in my perspective, in the way that I trained people, in the way that I ran programs, in the way that I ran events. And they started to respect me for that. And I believe it was during that time that I started to realize that I could live differently. I also feel like I've maybe told this part of the story before, but it was a pretty impactful moment where one of our guys, the parts manager, which like we were buddies, not a big deal, but he said something to me one day that really, really altered my way of thinking. And I was dating this guy and he was really, really nice. And he had a really nice house and a really good job and a car and a truck and a motorcycle. And he was just a down-to-earth, good dude, right? And he adored me and it was great until it wasn't, right? So just like all relationships, he didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I, really. It just didn't work out. Anyway, we had broken up and then Tony had started pursuing me romantically. And when I told this parts guy that I was dating, I was going to date Tony finally, after I finally like gave in, he said to me, good, because you're not the kind of woman who should be with a regular person. And I was like, what? He was like, you're extraordinary and you deserve to have a partner who's extraordinary. And I was like, oh shit, okay. And obviously you guys know that Tony dreams very big and he does not think inside of any box at all. And so it snowballed from there, but it's still something. And so I'm telling you that story because it's still something that I have to that I catch myself on, where I'm like, well, this is enough. And it's like, or what if I actually trusted in my ability and I did it that way? Now, it took me many years to get to a place where I can catch that closer to the moments that it's happening, right? But I wanted to share that with you because it was me allowing myself to have my superpower strengths tapped into, and then allowing that to me to feel into that. And in those little moments, there was a few, like I said, little moments where I was like, this actually could be really different. But when I left the shop and I started my own company, it was really weird. Because, okay, when I started Posh Promotions, I was still at the shop. The reason I started that company was because He needed help staffing the events that we were sending people to, and the payment side of things was weird and just all this stuff. So I started that company to support my boss, not myself. It allowed him a different way to pay me, which was great. But I got to hire these girls and give them a place to make money too, which was also great. But I didn't start that company because of myself, really. I used my experience in working promotional products like Monster and different beer companies and the experience running events for the shop, and I turned it into a company, right? But it wasn't until I left the shop and I realized that I had created, or I had been put in, I should say, a situation where no other shop was willing to hire a woman in that position at that time, right? So what was I going to do? And I started into not coaching, but into online project management with my own company and talk about, you guys, I've been doing this for 13 years, 12 or 13 years. And people around me, especially in Missouri, still don't recognize that as a company, as a success, because I don't have a tangible item. Like, I'm not selling this mug. Although I do sell mugs on the internet, but nobody acknowledges that that's a real business either. It is what it is. But I wanted to share that with you because there are still moments where, and especially when for many years after I started my company, I'd still have those moments where I would feel guilty or weird or like there was something wrong with me for wanting life to be different for me. So a lot of times my clients come to me and they feel like they're the only one. So they don't talk about it because they don't want to sound boastful or ungrateful or whatever it might be to their friends, to their family members. So instead, they just keep it to themselves. And 9 times out of 10, they never actually do anything about that message and that push that they feel inside of themselves. And that's the scary part. That's the part that breaks my heart. That's the part of why I truly believe that my business morphed into what it is, to where I'm available to share this message, but also to help people who need help with those things, because it's so wildly important. I would say that the difference between wanting more and believing more is possible is almost like night and day, to be honest with you, because a lot of people walk around and talk a lot about what they're going to do if they win the lottery, what they're going to do if they, blah, blah, blah thing happens. They still don't believe that to be true, right? Like, most of people don't actually believe they're going to win the lottery. They don't actually believe they're going to become a millionaire. So when they make comments like, yeah, when I'm a millionaire, I'm going to do this, or if I was a millionaire, I would do that. Like, there's a difference between saying the words and saying, wow, that would be really cool, and believing that it's possible, believing that it can look however you want. That's the other thing that gets tricky in this like growth process mindset, though, is that that whole millionaire conversation comes up a lot. And the difference, though, is like, does that matter to you? Like, what matters to you? Because we're told that it's a dollar amount, when in reality, I'll never forget one time I was in, where was I? Utah? I was in Utah, and I heard Dan Young. If you don't know him, you should look him up. He's a fun and very genuine man. But Dan Young said, and he's very rich and he has lots of very fancy cars. And he said that none of that shit matters if you're not happy, because he knows he's had more phone calls with men with millions of dollars in their bank account, sitting in their Lamborghini or their Ferrari, calling him on the other end of the phone, contemplating putting a gun in their mouth. It's a thing. So when I have these conversations with my clients or anyone who comes to me, the last thing that I do is ask them about how much money they're looking to make, because money is a byproduct. It has to be, because if the only reason you're doing it is for money, it will not last. I've never seen it last, if that's the case, because everything's connected. So if your only motivation is money, but then like you're not well and your personal life is shitty and your house is a disaster and you have no relationship with self or spirit or God or whoever you believe in, like if all those other things are shit and all you're doing is focusing on money, you're never going to have more, meaning it'll never feel like more. It'll never feel fulfilling if that's the case. So the thing I always focus on is like, how do you want your day to feel? What do you want your days to look like? And when I ask people that question, they tend to look at me like, that's cute, but like, I don't get to decide that. Maybe not right this moment, you don't get to decide every part of that, but you do get to decide how you walk into your days, how you handle your days, how you manage the things on your plate, how you speak to other people, how you speak to yourself, what you put into your body, how much sleep you get. Like, you do have control over a lot more things than most people give themselves credit for. So it's not about how much can I get. It's about what matters to me. How do I want my life to feel? Because I'm not a millionaire, guys. Like, I'm not even fucking close to being a millionaire. I don't even know how much money Tony has, so maybe he is. I don't think he is, but I don't know. We don't share that. We don't need to. We have separate financial situations. We share an account to pay shared bills or whatever, right? But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that my life looks the way it does because I designed it this way. And I have to remind myself of that still now. So just like if you've ever tried to do any kind of mindset work, you know that it's a lifelong game. It's a lifelong commitment to consistently catching yourself, especially if you're not constantly surrounded by other people who are doing the exact same thing, which I do believe is almost impossible to do. Meaning, like, you can't just always only be around butterfly people. You know that quote that says, you can't have butterfly conversations with caterpillar people. Yeah. So believing that you're worthy, oh boy, that's a whole thing in itself. But believing that you're allowed to desire something differently than what you have, or something differently than your parents ever had, or than your sisters and brothers had, or your friends have. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. And I believe that wanting more and believing more is possible is something you feel. You feel it down in your bones. You know what I mean when I say that. So why clarity matters before change. So you, like I said, what do you want your days to feel like? What do you want? I had a client say to me, I just want my podcast to be successful. Now, granted, this show is getting really good numbers as far as consistency of viewers, watching the whole episode, coming back week after week to listen and watch, that kind of stuff. It's getting good numbers. And the words they were saying to me was, I want my podcast to be successful, or when my podcast is successful. And I was like, hold on a minute. What does a successful podcast look like to you? And it was a really interesting answer, because her answer had absolutely nothing to do with money or views. It had to do with it feeling more purposeful to her and her being more intentional about how she was using her time in front of the camera. That's what made it feel like a success to her. What? I'm over here like manager Jamie going, oh my God, why aren't you happy? These numbers are amazing. But she's not feeling connected, and it doesn't feel successful to her because she's not feeling super intentional and really, really solid about every single thing that she's recording. What? Now that is clarity, guys, because once the clarity happens, we can create the change. And what I know to be true is when we truly believe in something and we're giving it our heart, it does attract abundance right back. It just does. So I know from my experience and my belief that her changing that and really, really deepening the purpose behind every single conversation that's had on that camera will, in fact, bring a financial reward. I know it will. So, but she had to get to a place where she could find that clarity before the changes would really be able to happen. So I want to encourage you to identify one area in your life where you crave more. Maybe that's more time to yourself. Maybe that's more travel. Maybe that's more time to cook. Maybe that's more time to sit on the porch with your kids and talk or do puzzles or go for walks or whatever it is. Maybe it's more out of your body physically. Maybe it's more deep conversations and connection. Maybe it's more money. Maybe it's more, I do ask you to like, if it's more money, because most people want more money, you need to go a layer deeper. Like, why do you want more money? Is it a pride thing? Is it a status thing? Is it a security thing? Because there are things we can do to create security without having to always make more money, right? So we want to identify one area where you crave more. And then your job is to create clarity around that craving. So my suggestion for that is let it rumble around in your head a little bit, but also grab out a piece of paper and just start writing. Write down one area I crave more, and write the name down, or the area, whatever comes to your head, right? The other thing is you have to keep this simple. You have to keep it simple or you're not going to do it. It's not going to work if you overcomplicate it. So one thing, one area, and get really clear on why. Like, what does that mean? Craving more in my alone time. What does that look like? What could that look like? What am I trying to get from that? For me, it's less anxiety in my body. It's less exhaustion in my body. It's the ability for me to think clearer and respond clearer throughout the day is part of why craving more depth in my alone time matters. So then how do I do that? I incorporate things like meditation, nature walks, put my phone away when I'm by myself. I let myself create, whether it's coloring or journaling or crocheting or cooking, whatever it is. There's more depth in those moments when you choose to let them be that way. So that would be my gentle action moment for you to take away from this conversation. And I want you to remember why you're doing it. You're doing that because you want more. And we're trying and we're in the process of helping you create and cultivate a positivity mindset. I would love to hear any questions or impact or reflections that you have about this. Feel free to put them in the comments anywhere that you're watching, or email me at me@jamiethurber.com. We'll also list that below. And let's keep this conversation going, you guys, because I'm going to build on this week after week. So wherever you're listening, make sure you're subscribed. You can even hit the little bell to get notified when a new episode comes out. And we will make sure to keep walking this path with you. And the reason this is a beautiful way for me to deliver this is it gives you space to really reflect on the things that come out of this exercise I just gave you, because that in itself is the necessary foundational pieces to truly start living a life on your own terms. As always, thanks for being here. If you like this message, give it a thumbs up. Please share it with someone that you think may also benefit from it. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. Thank you for listening to Operation B, the podcast. To support this message and to support the show, please make sure that you like, follow, and share wherever you enjoy listening. And be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. That's the way to support this message. Thank you for being here, and see you next time.